another band. Ooh, you know what? Sorry, babe.
I saw No Antics applied, and I
sent them the link.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I wrote about the People's Pride in the newsletter last week. I do the newsletter every other week. So that makes sense. But I guess maybe we can talk about that too.
So is it a St. Louis Magazine event?
No, it's not, actually.
So it's its own event.
No, I'm good.
I have some cold LaCroix if you change your mind.
Oh, what flavors?
It's lemon.
I'll do lemon. Hell yeah.
You want one now?
Yeah.
Lou, can you grab a lemon?
You got it. Upstairs?
No, in this fridge right here. I'm not an animal.
I am most definitely a LaCroix drinker, and I try I like all the flavors of the rainbow.
Yeah, lemon's way up there for me. I never sneeze at the lime. The loop's not on, is it? Is there a cycle illuminated in blue?
It's about to end.
But is it blue or is it gray?
Are you talking about on here?
Yeah.
It's blue.
Okay, so hit that cycle button at the bottom that's also blue because we want to turn the cycle off. Is there a blue bar above the stems? With like down arrows? It must not be. Are we just recording?
Yeah, we're just recording.
Okay.
All right. He said.
Go on without him.
Yeah.
Totally understandable.
We're doing so. There's
so much.
He's friends with Shane Presley, so we're doing that on Saturday.
Yeah.
So he's like, we'll do that.
I did that show when Lucius and I released the 2 Deep record. I did a Rock Paper Podcast. Just me though, and that's funny. That's great. He's still doing that. It's been a long time. So Shane Presley of Rock Paper Podcast, I did his show when we put out the 2 Deep record just to promote it and for legitimacy.
Yeah.
And that was before I ever had this one.
That was so funny.
Yeah.
Look at that wheel.
That was like a whole. I'll cold open with that story. That Lucius and I wanted to do the White Stripes for Undercover Weekend back when it was at the Firebird, and we knew we had to be like an established band of some kind to get a gig like that, and so we put like a whole. I still have the Twitter page. We made a whole like anything they asked for in the application. We made an account to meet that requirement, so that we could do that, and then we got it, and we did a whole album, and we released it. And then we did Undercover Weekend as the White Stripes, and then we did the following year as Madonna, and that year was at Delmar Hall.
Yeah.
But we kind of made up a 2-piece band to be in, and material, and I had a vision for jackets, like we'd have like leather jackets, because nobody's ever done that.
Nobody's ever done leather
Nobody's
jackets.
ever done leather jackets. Guys, welcome back to Jacob V Weekly. We want to start like we do every week by reminding you to check out Caddyshack of Hamel, Illinois. It's CATTYSHACKIL.org. Save a life or 9. The only way to save us and contribute to this show financially is patreon.com/JacobV. We just dropped the Taylor Gunner interview. That was a lot of fun. If you haven't watched that, NSFW. And we're here today with my friend Joe Hess, and I want to kind of provide some background. So I know you mostly from, I was a production volunteer at KDHX when they were still on Magnolia. And then you were the shepherd of the RFT showcase for a long time.
That's true.
Yeah. One of my biggest regrets is that one year I played the RFT showcase with my friend Caroline, but also I had been invited that year to play my own material and get my name on a flyer even, but I just didn't check my email enough. I really shit the bed on that one. So RFT Showcase was, I remember being mostly in the Grove, and it was several venues and local bands playing. Like it was a whole weekend.
Typically, yes. Sometimes it was Saturday and Sunday, and some years it was a Friday night, like a big kickoff on Friday night with a marathon on Saturday that started really early and ended really late. Yeah.
That's kind of, especially depending on the weather, that may be better. You know what I mean? Sometimes the Sunday part, I'm like, ugh, that's a real hit or miss. The vibe has to be right for a Sunday.
Yeah.
That's so true. And one of the Riverfront Times music showcases, I believe it was in 2018, we brought in national headliners for the first time.
Yeah.
And that was an experiment for sure. But, those headliners played on Sunday. And because of a heat wave, and I think Father's Day coincided with that second day as well, there was not the turnout we expected.
Yeah.
But that experience also further illustrated to me that this event specifically, its strength is in local music. Not that I didn't know that already, but sometimes when you work as part of a team and people have a vision, you want to include, you want to try to include as many people and their efforts as possible and their creative vision and actualize, what they want out of it as well. So I often found myself as a kind of middleman between the organization I was working for and the music community. And I tried my best 2014 through 2019 to, navigate the space between and try to create something that was fulfilling the needs of everyone.
Right. What are some of those needs?
Well, for me, I don't want to speak for anyone else specifically.
But the collection of things that people have said, oh, it'd be great if we had.
Yeah. Certainly space on the show to perform. And what I mean by that is a time slot that is inclusive of enough time to set up your equipment and break it down. One of the biggest challenges with having an all-local music festival, not just an all-local music festival, but one that includes so many people, is fast turnover times.
Yeah.
And coordinating that with everyone and communicating that, if there are technical difficulties, even if they're not your fault, your set might be cut short.
Right.
But, as far as artists being compensated, that's not going to change. If your set is cut short, you're still being paid.
Right.
And there were, even cases of performers who were booked outside and, a spot thunderstorm rolled through and, their slots had to be canceled or we moved them inside. But, at the end of the day, I think what people really want is the reassurance that the person who is booking their bands in promoting their work knows what they're doing. And what I mean by that is the first time I played a Riverfront Times showcase, long before I ever worked on it, I was playing in a noise rock band. And we were booked, I want to say this was 2010, and the event was on Washington Avenue. Yeah. And it was in a lot of restaurants. A lot of restaurants were participating. And there was not communication between the organizers back then and the participating businesses about the genres of music and how loud bands were going to be. Yeah. So I was in a situation, not just once, but another year that I performed in 2012, where we were asked to either stop, immediately, or in one case, we had an amp just unplugged from the wall.
Great. Those are good for amps, guys. If you notice somebody's got an amp, especially if it's real loud, walk up to it and just unplug it. That's like some of the old ladies I work with. If their computer's doing something weird, they're like, "Let me just shut it down," and they just close it. And I'm like, that was my number one thing I was thinking. It's like setting a band up for, like, I did a gig that I was doing for free just to have a reason to farm some content, and I have an acrylic plexiglass like drum screen, drum shield thing. Yeah. I got specifically for that because I'm like, it's really so I have a show to do with the drummer that was moving away at the time, but it was also like this room is not treated for full volume acoustic drums at all, so I got to try to do something. Yeah. But yeah, so that's the thing. You're like showing up and nobody has any idea what the noise constraints are of the environment that they're booked in, and nobody thought to ask ahead of time.
Yeah, it's really interesting. My goal is to set up everyone for success, and success means different things to different people, but ultimately I want people to feel welcome, especially in efforts to bring like different kinds of music together, different genres,
Yeah.
but also, when we're talking about musical diversity, there's a lot more that goes into it than just genre. I think about what part of St. Louis people are coming from. Are you based in St. Charles? Are you based out in Jefferson County?
As a St. Charles person, I thank you.
Well,
He didn't
Not
say
that
whether
I-
it was positive or negative.
That's true, but just for mentioning it,
Just for even acknowledging that we
even
exist.
acknowledging
Thank
it.
you.
I don't live there now, but
Yeah.
Well, I grew up out in Jefferson County, and my senior year of high school, I started playing in a band, and immediately I happened upon Fugazi, and my interpretation of the music culture. I didn't so much gravitate toward things like the straight edge movement, but what interested me was the accessibility and not having to play in a traditional concert venue. And so my friends and I were networking with people on stlpunk.com and booking VFW halls in rural Missouri, even further away from St. Louis, and we would have these big weekend shows. We would have these.
we have a guest, Jacob. Are you serious?
I didn't know. That
Are
was
you
gonna
serious?
We would have these. We would have these big events, and they were really great because I think the perception that you can go see like a band that you like or a genre of music that you like, it may only be accessible in that city that you live
Right.
close to.
Right.
That was something that, living 45 minutes outside of the city, that was something that we fought against.
And you could go do a gig in the city, but you're not going to, all your friends, you can't expect all 30, 40, 50 of your friends to make the trip all the way out there for,
Sure.
you know what I mean? Or 200 of them.
Especially with us back then in our age ranges, like most of our friend group still wasn't driving yet. So to coordinate, carpools, it's interesting, right? Like I think sometimes the perception is that St. Louis is this dangerous city. So even when we did play shows, back then for us, it was the Limp Arts Center.
Oh my God. I just walked past that the other day.
Yeah.
Does he not do events there anymore?
Not
No.
very often. Occasionally, they will pop up with an event here or there. I have noticed on my way to Off Broadway that the lights are on.
Yeah.
many
He lives in
nights.
that building.
Many nights the lights are on, and I have to shout out that place. Going from booking these shows in VFW halls, in deep Missouri, my next step was putting together shows at Limp Arts Center for
Yeah.
a short time.
Yeah. And that's kind of part of my relationship with the Heavy Anchors. It was kind of the first place that ever let me put a whole show together. I was like 20. They didn't know that, but they had just opened. And, I was like, I have a couple bands and I kind of want to put a show together. And it was the first place to ever let me do that, which is, how I was kind of preferred to do it and kind of, know everything ahead of time. Partly for that production reason of, you know what I mean? I want to know what I'm getting everybody into. Like, I know if I book Wax Fruit, they're going to bring their own PA speakers and they're going to use them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I set them up for success that way. I hope they're still around. So the reason we're here...
Shout out to Dom and Michaela.
Yeah, I love Wax Fruit.
I played at their old house in Columbia, 10 plus years ago. I have a long history of partying with Dom.
Yeah.
The first time I hung out with Dom was probably, only a year or two after I started playing music at all.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they're one
Lot
of
of
my
love.
favorites. They also... You know who loves them? My 70-year-old stepdad.
Nice.
nice.
He thought they were great. And... so the reason we're here is Free for All, a music festival.
Not a festival.
Okay, that was the thing. They called it a music festival in the thing I read today.
I know, and that's great. That's an interpretation
Yeah.
for sure. We're looking at it as a music showcase. I think a festival a lot more goes into a festival
Than the music and the production and the
Yeah.
There's games. There's a water station.
And I would say that the Music at the Intersection Festival and Conference happening 1 week later is something that is emblematic of what a festival should be, what a music-based festival should be. What we're doing is different in that it is focused purely on the musical performances.
Yeah.
And so, maybe some people can look at the word showcase as corny. I did at one point in time. I felt like using showcase was corny, but I'm embracing it now because there aren't a lot of options in St. Louis for local musicians to actually show their work to a potentially new audience.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to frame this as a showcase because we do concerts. I'm in bands, you're in bands. We do concerts all year long, and we sometimes do events that are called music festivals as well. And I'm not looking to move into that territory and take away from anything that currently exists in St. Louis. I want people to look at this a little differently in terms of we are trying to establish a new and exciting endeavor that I hope is a consistent event that people can look forward to every year. And by calling it a showcase, I think we're reframing it and we're putting it in its own class. We are focusing really specifically on the local musicians. And it's important to me that we're including musicians from all different levels. And what I mean by that is maybe some people you're going to see at Free For All only play a couple times a year.
Right.
Maybe some of the artists that you see at Free For All have only played a couple shows so far.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that they're on the show through our own research and wanting to offer all of these different levels. Some people who will be performing on the show will also be those individuals who are professionals, who have toured, who have maybe toured outside the country even. So we're looking to provide something that is musically diverse, not just in genre, but in the ages of the performers, what part of town or what part of the region they live in, and their experience level and their level relative to people who consider themselves to be professionals.
My thing is, we're talking about Free For All, the inaugural showcase for Free For All to sort of fill the void of offering this kind of focus on a diversity of local music. It's taking place the weekend before Music at the Intersection, the festival there, which includes some local music, but certainly not primarily.
It's interesting. Looking at the lineup, I see a lot of names in the Music at the Intersection festival lineup that I've worked with before on the RFT showcase in the past. And it's because people who are looking to really go to this next level in their lives as an artist and seek doing creative work as a professional. Music at the Intersection is almost unparalleled locally in giving a platform to those musicians. So what the goal of Free For All is, it's a way for Music at the Intersection and the Kransberg Arts Foundation to reach the vast music community that isn't already covered in Music at the Intersection.
Yeah.
Music at the Intersection has a lane as far as genres.
Yeah.
R&B, soul, hip hop, certainly jazz. And those are just a few of the genres that they serve. But there are some things that aren't included. The first thing that comes to mind really are a variety of rock genres, punk genres, metal. Myself, I have a background in playing experimental music and punk music. So both of those umbrellas are things that I will be working to include in the event, certainly. But Free For All offers Maddie a way to include so many more musicians, and some will go on to perform at Maddie in the future.
Sure.
That is the idea. And certainly if we create something that resonates with the St. Louis region and we bring out an excited audience that's large, that's mobilized, and people agree with me that we need a local music holiday here in St. Louis, something that is not competing with other music events, something that's not considered a music festival. What I want people to think of is, I think about Cinco de Mayo on Cherokee Street.
Right.
I think about Mardi Gras in Soulard, and what I would like is Free For All in Midtown.
Yeah.
I want to create this yearly thing that we can count on, that we can all look forward to, no matter who's playing that particular year.
Yeah, because it's more about the experience of the variety than it is about seeing any one act.
Let me ask you a question, if you don't mind. Tell me about your experience, not at a specific Riverfront Times music showcase, but in general, when you think about that event and the positive aspects of it. Like, what rings true to you? Like, what sticks out to you as far as that experience?
Well, I was always excited to see who I knew that would be included, just because it felt like, oh, that's a really good opportunity for them. Like, when I was first starting out, the people I really looked up to were like Ellen the Felon, and like Susie Q, I thought was really cool.
Jen Malzone.
Oh yeah, Jen Malzone. And so like anything, any of those like people that I thought were cooler than me, if they were included in that, I was like, oh, that's sweet. It made me want to go. And then I also went because I was like, okay, so I'll go and I'll pay or whatever to see the 3 or 4 people that I want to support. But then because I'm down there to do that, I'm going to see some stuff that's kind of magical and surprising. And I always like the kind of out of place element of, when I played with Caroline, we played at I guess it's Pie Guy now. I don't know if it was that then. It was definitely a pizza place.
It was Gezellig.
See?
And owned by an individual who used to run the demo in that same space. And I worked with them through the transitions, and he was still very interested in having us in after he had converted the space into a bottle shop.
Yeah.
Which was very cool. I have so many fond memories of working with business owners.
The small businesses, yeah.
Yeah, in the Grove. Not just Atomic and when the Ready Room was there, but all of the other spots that allowed us to bring a PA in and transform their space. By the end, I was having individual meetings with the managers and business owners of these places to make sure that the artists that I was booking were tailored to the space. But also when I had my own agendas, and absolutely, I will admit, I have creative ideas that I've tried to inject in these events in the past. And one of them was, crazy performance art. Where the performer had to lay out a bunch of plastic on the ground because he was going to be using fluids. And
that's what I'm talking about. Because the kids watching this will understand what the fuck is up, Denny's. That meme or that moment of the punk band or the hardcore band playing inside of a Denny's, right? But when I was in my early 20s, especially, things like Record Store Day, especially at like A-Pop Records, or RFT Showcase, or Undercover Weekend, or like destination kind of often multi-day music experiences like that. That's where I saw those moments in real life, where you see a punk band in a diner or in a boutique, like a fashion store that really has nothing going on in the middle of a Sunday anyway. And so, let's move some stuff and put the band in here for that reason. Lo-Fi Cherokee was like that. Lo-Fi Cherokee almost killed my poor wife, though, because the band's performing like a tiny set, if even a whole set, and not just one song, in a space, and they're shooting video, and then you have to run down the street to the next place. And that was a little chaotic for my wife. So the appeal to me was an excuse to network, but also the opportunity to discover things on accident.
Absolutely. I performed Lo-Fi Cherokee in 2015.
With who?
Hardbody.
Oh, yeah. I might have been there.
In a small sandwich shop, Elaine's. It was such a great experience.
Elaine's is still around. Shout out to Elaine's. I had that the other day. One time I went into Elaine's and they recognized me and I got it for free.
Are you serious?
That's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I had like met them before in like a music capacity or whatever, but I hadn't been into the store yet. So yeah, shout out to Elaine's. Going strong.
Elaine's.
Closed on Wednesdays, I think.
I learned a lot from that experience and going to it in the past. I think Bill Streeter's an incredible person who's contributed a lot.
Huge inspiration to me.
He contributed so much to the St. Louis music community. And Undercover Weekend, I played one of those events as well. And I remember having, I was a little young. I think it was before I was working in an official capacity.
Yeah.
I think at the time I was running what some people might consider to be an illegitimate venue space on Cherokee Street.
Which one?
Cranky Yellow.
Oh, God, I loved Cranky Yellow.
Shout out to David Wolk. David Wolk is still doing a lot of incredible work, especially at the City Museum.
Cranky Yellow was like if you had 16 square feet of Portland that you just crammed into Cherokee. Like that was the vibe I remember.
So true, and it was no surprise to me that building became a music venue after David left, and Blank Space, obviously did so many things for the community in the
Blank
time
Space was great.
that it was there. Again, shout out Cave. I learned a lot from Cave. I even had an online public argument with Cave on Facebook that I regret to this day, but also it taught me that there are so many moving parts when it comes to being in a position where you're providing space for people. And the amount of pressure that someone like him would be under, but all venue owners, really, anyone trying to establish something, there's an enormous amount of pressure that has nothing to do really with your bottom line and keeping the doors open. And so it is often thankless work.
Yeah.
And
because everyone thinks you're getting rich or that you're the only one making money. And that, any problem that comes up is your problem. And yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. And he is somebody who sustained that space, regardless of the amount of money that was coming in from the outside. And that is an enormous sacrifice. And he did that for many years. And he's just one of many people. You also mentioned A-Pop Records. Shout out to
R.I.P.
Tiffany.
This is turning into a in memoriam. Remember back when we were young and everything was cool?
Tiffany Minks helped me out an enormous amount. I was doing a weekly show on KDHX from 2008 to 2019. And A-Pop Records, the amount of records that I bought from A-Pop and played on the radio show over the years, I mean, they really fueled the show in a lot of ways. And I had the privilege of performing there, for several record store days.
Did you ever play in the basement?
Many times.
I have a couple 45s over there from a band that was called Joe Buck, I think. Or
Jack Buck.
Jack Buck, yeah.
Shout out Dan Reuter, incredible engineer and drummer.
One of them, the sleeve and the record are acrylic. And then the other one, the sleeve is like laser etched on wood.
Yes, very unique. Right?
Yeah, you don't just see that. People aren't just doing that. And I bought those at a show in the basement of A-Pop Records. That was it may have been their last show.
Quite possibly. So you bring up all of these institutions that were around.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to note that many of the people who were involved in all of these endeavors, we're still here.
Yeah.
We're still here. And if anything, COVID created a situation where many of us were forced out of live music and into introspection. For me, I got into a lot of other hobbies, but I
like
also...
what?
I got into making electronic music. So I got into learning, I taught myself Ableton.
Yeah.
And I got into sequencers, drum machines, groove boxes.
You have an OP1?
I have an OP1 for sale.
Is that yours? That's so funny. I had one and then I sold it but now I kind of want one. I don't know. I'm okay. You know me. You know me.
So one of my main goals with Free For All is to create something that all of these people who dedicated huge chunks of their lives to making St. Louis a more vibrant place. I hope that this event is something that those individuals can look at and say, like, a little bit of what I did is in that, because it is.
Yeah, because that's my thing, is that, like, as a person who hasn't given up on this whole thing, and, like, the reason I care about this, I don't have any interest in moving. My great-grandfather built the arch. Wow. And so... Not by himself. Not by himself.
By himself with his two bare hands.
There had to be people to put stuff on the crane and to, bolt it in the place when he
Look,
put it up
we know how arches are built. Yeah. I'm from St. Louis. I know
we've
how
all done it at the Science Center. We built a little baby arch. And that is never not satisfying. I want to get one of those here. We should have a foam arch.
Yeah.
So my thing is, I've always been like, anytime there's a new trend in mainstream music, if it's tied to a place... like what Outkast did to Atlanta or what Nirvana did to Seattle or whoever did all those things or whatever. So my thing is like, well, eventually somebody other than Nelly is going to be from here. Somebody other than Tennessee Williams and Nelly. You know what I mean? And that I've always kind of coexisted in making music with a more mainstream day job of some kind anyway. And I meet some of the most interesting artists in St. Louis that way. People that are bartenders most of the time, or, they are just here for a few years because they're in school, but they, want to perform in the meantime or whatever. There's, people that have moved away and whatnot. So my thing is like, there's plenty of opportunities for cool things like that. Like the idea that you'd have to go move somewhere else. You know what I mean?
It's heartbreaking to think that, but also I have so many friends that have moved to other cities such as Chicago, New York, LA, Philadelphia, and it's not always about the music. I think if it was about the music, maybe some of those individuals would still be here.
Yeah.
But for me, I feel a very similar way, but we can't wait for a savior. We can't wait for a musician with resources and notoriety, because it doesn't always trickle down to the other creative people in the city.
No, Nelly's not even allowed in the city limits. He snuck over to Maryland Heights and they got him. Remember? They just got him. Was this last year? And that's my thing too. It's like the scene is always way more interesting when you know about the bands people were in before they were in the more famous one, or I have tons of vinyl over there from everything Jack White did before the White Stripes that I just give him money all the time.
Although I will stand up for those first couple of White Stripes albums. I love them.
The guitar tone on the first one is insane. First riff on the very first song on the very first record is insane, and I'll put it up against anything.
I went through about a year and a half ago. I went through a pretty major life event that was very sad, and for some reason, I put on some old White Stripes, and maybe because I listened to it so much in high school, it was very therapeutic, and I hadn't had, it's weird. You might assume, like, if you're passionate about music or you're a musician, that you've had, these experiences in your life where music has saved you, and I've always heard that from people. Yeah. And I'm not saying the White Stripes saved me, but I'm saying I had a real emotional response in a time in my life where I was vulnerable to music that maybe it really could have been any music that I just happened to also really be into during high school.
Right.
But I had this feeling of like this thing that's stirring within me.
Yeah.
The sadness that I'm experiencing is actually being calmed more so by putting on these albums that I listened to in my adolescence rather than, just smoking some weed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So both together is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both together is really nice. During quarantine, I was microdosing psilocybin for a little bit, and it made the music really good. The and that's the thing too. I think the White Stripes are so accessible because like it kind of spoke to your inner child in a way, and so then to do that from a nostalgic perspective has got to be somewhat therapeutic, and it's not like overly sad as music.
No, a lot of it is really cheesy.
Yeah,
and I think that's why it works. And
it's so satisfying.
And honestly, I think My opinion, Jack White is very derivative of musicians, of black musicians from Detroit. And so, there's that's a whole other conversation. Right?
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah. But there's also something to be said about individuals who are able to take that influence and to bridge the gap to a mainstream audience. So I'm definitely appreciative of that, and what he's done with his label. He's put out music from friends of mine. So, can't say too many negative things.
Did you ever go down there?
No, actually.
Oh yeah, I've been a couple of times. I did the record booth once. That's over there too. And but the one of the very first radio broadcasting things I ever did is I had a radio show in college, and my friend Heath came on with some friends of his that he played music with, and he was talking about the problem with St. Louis is if you want to go see a couple of cool shows in one night, it's a lot of driving.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm like, oh, this really great band is going to be at the Tap Room, they don't start until 11, but I really want to go see that band at Blueberry Hill before that, and that we might miss something. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because they might overlap, and we got to do parking in both of those places. Mm-hmm. Now, the one thing I wanted to get into is I understand this is going to be 10 venues.
Yeah, right now. So the venues that are included are definitely subject to change.
Yeah.
As we get closer.
That's the thing. I didn't want to force you to speak on specific venues, but if there's if there's any that for a fact are involved, I'm totally down.
Yeah, definitely. So the venues that we have listed right now are tentatively what we believe where we believe all the music will take place in. So yeah, I want to put that out there. It's absolutely going to be in the Grand Center Arts District and that footprint. And as of right now, plans are to put music at all of those venues that we have listed online. But something that's really important to me about this event is right now we are in the midst of this campaign where we just announced the event last week, and we have, it's a really simple Google form, and is it getting just blasted or? We've gotten a lot of responses, and the form is broken up really into two parts. When you look at it, it asks if you would like to apply to play as a musician, and then it asks if you would like to nominate somebody else. Yeah. Both of those are equally important to me. Yeah. Because working on the Riverfront Times Music Showcase, there used to be this thing called the Riverfront Times Music Awards, and they broke the categories into genres. Mm-hmm.
We were too young, I think, when that was still happening.
I think so, yeah, because I don't remember that.
I remember hearing about it, but not necessarily being included. Mm. Go ahead.
I am also a fan of the Nintendo Wii. So,
I got a couple of those here.
Nice.
Nice.
You can play GameCube games on the Wii.
Yeah. My favorite was 13. Do you remember 13? It was XIII. Mm-hmm. It looked kind of like Archer, but it was a first-person shooter, and we were waiting for the GoldenEye follow-up, so it was exciting at the time.
My favorite GameCube game was F-Zero GX, and you can currently play that on the Nintendo Switch 2 Nintendo Online subscription. I recommend it. So,
not a sponsor.
We can talk about video games probably for even longer than we can talk about music.
So I'm looking at so there's tons of good spots down there. I'm looking at the public radio article.
It's really important to me to keep the footprint kind of small so people can walk. Yeah. One of the challenges with the Riverfront Times Showcase in the Grove was that the Manchester's long, and from the first venue to the last venue on the street, it can be the entire street, like all the way to Kings Highway almost. So
because if you go from Platypus all the way down to like Rehab, like that's
tired. Is that a mile or a half?
Well, one time we were drunk and we wanted to go from a town. I don't drink anymore, so that's why I say that, because this is a moment in time. And we were at Atomic Cowboy, but we wanted to go to Gramophone, and everybody was going to walk. And I said, I am not walking all the way down to Gramophone. So I got on a Lime scooter because we still had those then. And I had a poncho on. It was Peruvian alpaca, and I was going down the turn lane down Manchester, blackout drunk on a bird scooter, no helmet. But my poncho was flowing perfect. And when you get up to 29, 30, like those things max out at, stopping is the scary part.
Yeah.
We can't keep shit. Like, do we have any scooters anymore?
No, not that I know of. If we do, I'm not seeing them.
Yeah.
And I had a moment.
I see them occasionally. I really do.
There's a couple of times, like if
scooters saved my life.
I see them
if
in
you see a parking spot in front of Broadway Oyster Bar,
Yeah.
and you're going to Ballpark Village, and you see a scooter next to a parking spot, it's perfect because it's like, oh, I'll take. Let me take that again. Let me take the scooter down to where I'm actually going, and then I don't have to pay $20 to park.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I'm borrowing somebody else's car. The plates are expired. If I get a ticket,
I was actively planning to use a scooter to get from Prism to the Improv Shop on Saturday.
And you couldn't find one?
My friend ended up going to the show and gave me a ride, but that was going to be one of my options, like see if there's a scooter around and then maybe an Uber.
Because there's things, and you've probably had this experience where you have 2 gigs at once. You know what I mean?
Occasionally, yeah.
And I try to avoid it, but sometimes it happens. And a scooter comes in clutch sometimes in that situation.
Honestly, but you gotta hope that it's there. You can't just call upon a scooter.
Also, to somebody else driving down the street or walking down the street, if you got a cape, maybe a guitar on your back, and you're on a scooter, maybe you're a little drunk, like you are the most interesting NPC somebody is going to come across. On that day.
Yeah,
especially with the poncho.
I've been playing Far Cry 5 because it was like $4 on Steam the other day, and there's a very rare spawn. Kind of like in Minecraft, you have the chicken jockey.
Mm-hmm.
Not common. You don't just see those. There's a guy with a flamethrower in Far Cry 5, and you don't just see a lot of them.
Yeah.
And you got to shoot him a couple times to get him to bend over so you can shoot his jetpack and blow him up.
Nice.
And that's what that reminds me of. So trying to keep it as walkable as possible. It's not going to be too cold, so it's going to be fine.
It's still going to be hot. Will guarantee you.
Yeah, early September is still hot, but
But it's going to be great.
Yeah, the thing about it, though, is that I feel like by the end of the summer, all of us are far more acclimated to the heat than we are.
Doing this in June would be a lot harder because people are still like, I don't want to. The air hurts my face. Like, if you survive until September, you can go out and do some things.
And we'll probably have another one of those heat domes where it, like, bakes us alive a little bit. And then maybe September will be kind of after that. So we'll, like, really be...
Fingers crossed for no heat domes.
Yeah.
So there's a form that we're going to put in the show notes, of course, where bands can apply to perform, artists can apply to perform. Also, you could nominate somebody, which if you're looking at 1,000 applications and somebody that you're down between, you have 2 people that do very similar things. If somebody has a good nomination, that's going to push them over the finish line, I would imagine, versus if there's no nominations for a person that applied, right? So it's certainly not going to rule it out. There's research involved and whatnot, but just a call to action. Even if you don't want to play at Free For All, you could nominate somebody that you'd love to see there.
Yeah, I take the recommendations very seriously. So I brought up these Riverfront Times Music Awards earlier.
Oh, right, that's where we were.
Because that was this way that the music community could engage with Riverfront Times as an entity and say, like, this is what we like, this is what we're into, these are the people who are active. But unfortunately, not that many people actually voted. And when I was hired at Riverfront Times, my very first day, my very first task was counting physical paper ballots during the last year that they did physical ballots. Wow. And then the next year I was tasked with kind of like trying to get more people engaged in voting. I had such a massive distaste for it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really stoked about talking negatively about, especially since Riverfront Times isn't a thing anymore.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of weird, negative, unintended consequences with breaking people up into genres.
Yeah, that's always hard.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things for me, what I noticed right away is there were, more than half of the categories were subgenres of rock, but we had only 2 categories of hip hop. Well, that right away, the hip hop scene in St. Louis is enormous and honestly incredible.
Yeah.
And so it was very easy to see, like, we're right here, like all of these people are being excluded. So, my first change was to have more of those categories added and to adjust the categories. And then after that first or second year of doing that, I went to the marketing department at Riverfront Times, and explained to them, I think the festival itself can be better if we actually do away with the awards part and we put
make it a showcase.
Yes, and we put more resources toward writing about every band that's performing at the showcase, and then maybe we can increase the number of bands that are performing. So obviously, we're not here to talk about Riverfront Times.
No, but it's a good foundation. It's why, I mean, I reached out to you, or we talked about something maybe several months ago before Free for All was, official and whatnot. And I was like, man, I would love to have you on the podcast to talk about this. And you said, which I'm glad you did because you're doing something, that we should wait until there's something to promote and that there's something to do. And I was really hoping that would happen.
Yeah, me too. And it's been a really interesting experience getting this concept off the ground. What's interesting to me is that the idea of having, bands at multiple places on a strip or a street, this is not new. It's not even particularly special. It's people just call it a bar crawl, right?
Yeah.
But, when you call something a bar crawl, the emphasis is on the alcohol sponsor for the event and, drink specials and things like that. As somebody who just has an allergy to alcohol, I don't really get to partake in that part. But also, just in general, the music part was always far more interesting to me. So my biggest contribution when I got involved with the event, first and foremost, I went to the marketing department and I said, I work here now and I've played your event 2 years, 2 separate years. Both of those years, my band was a winner of one of your categories.
Yeah.
And both of those years, we didn't get to finish our set. We were either unplugged or asked by the restaurant owner, please stop. and that's just the truth. And I said, I would really like to get involved. I don't even need to be paid. I want to contribute to this, and I have things that I think we should change about the event, and I'm willing to do the work if you give me a shot at it. And I think all my old colleagues there saw was free work.
Yeah.
So
right.
which I'm so thankful.
You're the one that brought it up.
Yeah.
I said, hey.
Yeah, and my girlfriend Mabel Suen, she was already working on the event. She started working for RFT about a year prior. So she was basically just given like a list of tasks. She wasn't given creative input whatsoever. So by doing that and coming in and getting a little bit of a platform to change the event a little bit. Mm-hmm. And with her too, with her experience having done basically all the logistics and communication the previous year, we worked on it together in 2014 with the marketing team, and then the Riverfront Times was sold the next year, and the new company laid most of us off, myself included. But then a couple weeks later, I got a call asking to do the Riverfront Times music showcase because they still wanted to have the event. Mm-hmm. It was maybe a month and a half out, but they basically had the Grove, businesses in the Grove already like
reserved.
Prepped. Yeah, prepped for doing that. And some of the old marketing team were not laid off. They were still there. And just a few members of the editorial staff were still around. So it wasn't like I was going into this totally new situation with new people, but they asked me like, okay, well, here's a really small budget. Here's a short amount of time. Here's the offer, take it or leave it. If you don't do it, we probably just won't even have it this year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't have the best experience doing it the prior year, but I saw the ways that it could be improved.
Yeah.
And just the prospect of taking on a challenge like that with my experience level at the time, I was really deeply involved at KDHX, and I was a music writer for both Riverfront Times and St. Louis Magazine at that time. So for me, I maybe arrogantly, I thought, I could do this. Like, right. I'm suited for this. And people were so nice to me. People like Tef Poe agreed to perform that version of the event my first year, essentially for free, because I just told them like my position, where I'm at, and He was, just doing so many incredible things in the city that I just started reaching out to him and other folks, and I just said like, hey, look, the budget's limited, but if we do a good job, I think that they'll increase the budget, in the future, and they might dedicate more resources to it, but I'm going to try.
Yeah.
And a lot of people opted in and helped out, and before that year in 2015, that Riverfront Times event maxed out at 50 bands.
Yeah.
So my thing was like, well, if I can do it, I talked to the business owners in the Grove, and I said, I have this idea to try to cram 100 in one day, because the people I was approaching, like, even though I didn't have a lot of money, people were really interested in like
the opportunity and the context, and I mean, it's much more memorable. Like, I can't remember every show I played at the Firebird because I mean the inside of the building always looked the same, but like I can remember the weird stuff where it's not always the normal opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to the Firebird and Mike Cracciolo. He always kept my projects in mind when booking some of the bigger experimental artists that came through. I got to play with Melt Banana multiple times, and some other bands from Japan, just because he paid attention to what we were doing, and he kept it in mind. And that's if you're in a position where you're organizing, especially a concert, a showcase, a festival, whatever it is, you can certainly keep it within your circle of friends.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Some people are very successful in doing that and keeping a consistent audience because of, honestly, the consistency. People know what to expect, and they go. A really good example of this is Materia.
Yeah.
Some of the folks who created Materia, I've been friends with for a while, and when they started that, I knew right away. I was like, this is a home run, because this is something that has always existed in St. Louis, but no one has been able to create an outlet and a platform that was suited for the community. And they knew exactly what to do, and then they worked on it, month over month, and had regular events. And now, I'm so proud of all of them. I'm so proud of Manapool, Nadir, and Umami, Eric Dante. There was one afternoon I spent 3 hours interviewing Eric Dante for an article.
Yeah.
Just incredibly creative people. And, one example of folks coming out of this like COVID era, with something actually innovative that is exciting. And now, if you're an electronic artist or you're a DJ, that's the best gig you can play in town right now.
Yeah. So of course, lineup is just kind of emerging as a possibility. I thought it would be fun to mention some people I would consider nominating, or that I'd love to see at an event like this.
Let's hear it.
Okay. So I think Middle Class Fashion, for sure. I remember when they were brand new, and I was renting a space at Limp next to them, and so I love them. They're great. Who do you think?
I'll nominate No Antics.
No Antics should definitely be there. They're so great. Definitely.
Pomia.
Yeah. What?
Pomia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
Doing great open mic nights.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Casadores is really cool. They're a band. They're great.
You're just trying to name bands, aren't you?
No, I'm just thinking who I've seen lately.
Right.
Who have I seen lately? I think because some people just moved away too. I mean, like, I'm thinking, and there's some bands that just weren't around when we had stuff like this before. You know what I mean? It's just so much has happened. So much just keep happening.
I'm afraid we might have gone into history for a long time. It might put some people to sleep. I think people want to hear about what's happening now.
Well, I think that's very exciting. That's the thing. I think but also I think it was so important to me that like when I first heard about Free for All, it was that, it reminds me of all the things we used to like to do, things like the Off-Broadway Crawfish Boil, or like significant kind of events that you could look forward to, even if the music was different and it was like an experience.
Yeah.
And
I'm excited for this.
It's going to be
even
great.
Even just an attendee. Like,
what's the appeal to you in organizing this of Grand Center specifically?
Well,
because that's a transition. Because when I would have been helping out at Caden Checks, it was when they were still on Magnolia. I never did anything.
Have you been to Music at the Intersection?
No.
Okay, so the vibe at Music at the Intersection and the way that they are able to transform that area into a vibrant festival grounds, it is unlike any of the other festivals in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Cool.
And to me, as far as creativity, ingenuity, and make no mistake, Maddie has been focused on local music since its first year. I think a majority of the lineup either has ties to St. Louis or artists who are living and working in St. Louis. So for me, it was seeing what they've already done. And in seeing, reading, I read their mission statement. I read how they want to create this atmosphere in St. Louis and uplift musicians. The goal there is to take musicians who are operating maybe on this level, but they want to be more professional, or they want to break into the music industry in a significant way. They create a path for people that is unparalleled. No other festival in the city is dedicating so many resources and so much energy to doing just that. So their mission statement lines up with, honestly, the things that I was thinking about in my entire tenure working with the Riverfront Times Showcase. And I also worked on a few RFT events before the paper was sold in 2022. I worked on an event called Art Affair on Cherokee Street that prominently featured live music, and Pig and Whiskey Festival, which had national artists, but also still majority local artists. So the Grand Center Arts District is really unique in that it gives this gateway to these art galleries, to these spaces, these performance spaces that I think some people think of as being upscale.
Yeah, I would.
And they are, and the production, from the production to the promotion, they have things dialed in a way that I really haven't seen elsewhere.
Yeah.
So for me personally, the Grand Center Arts District provides this neighborhood space that, like the Grove. We have a lot of people that live in the Grove who might not really care for having a huge music event and a huge street crawl, but the businesses would love it, right? Moving over to Grand Center Arts District, there are less residential spaces to kind of
hinder.
Yeah, and what's really important to me is that Free for All slots into an existing music community that serves needs that aren't being met, and that does not take away from anyone's quality of living, even if it's for a weekend, and that doesn't take away from the multitude of programs that the Kransberg Arts Foundation have going on all year long.
Yeah.
So it's walkability.
Yeah.
It's I know with beyond a shadow of a doubt that the production is going to be there, that the staff is going to be experienced. We're not necessarily going into those small businesses and restaurant spaces with PAs and putting a punk band on the floor anymore. Now if you perform Free for All, you are getting you're guaranteed to have a world-class engineer helping you out.
Yeah.
Whereas, honestly, RFT Showcase, sometimes I was bringing my own band's PA because the space either didn't prepare or they had equipment, but it was having problems when we started setting up, the day before. That's an example, right? So it provides the perfect area for us to create something new And there are so many benefits to partnering with Music at the Intersection and Kransberg Arts Foundation to get this off the ground. Without the help of Chris Hansen, we certainly wouldn't be in the Grand Center Arts District right now.
Not the Chris Hansen.
No, the St. Louis Chris Hansen, who is a saint.
Yeah. I got distracted when you said, I was like, Chris Hansen.
Yeah.
Why don't I take a seat over here?
Yeah, go and take a seat.
Come on and take a seat, sir. Have a seat. Because that was my initial thing. Because that's like there was really mixed emotions about the prospect of moving KDHX from South City to Grand when it happened. Mm-hmm. But since then, a lot of these businesses were not open then. The venues that you're hosting a lot of these bands in, and it makes sense because they have, commercial talent coming through the area all the time. And then also, Maddie kind of showed you that it's possible to transform the space into that kind of thing. But are we thinking mostly indoor, most of the performances?
Most of them are. There will be some outdoor ones, and it's really to provide a diversity of experiences.
Yeah.
The sound is not as good when you're outside, unless you are outfitting it with a full outdoor stage and you have some kind of like buildings are blocking off certain areas so we can create, a space for acoustics to sound a little bit better. And my co-founder in Free For All, Mike Landau, has a lot of experience working on outdoor music festivals.
Yeah.
And so he is spearheading the production of everything. So his experience combined with the resources that Maddie and Kransberg Arts Foundation are providing, give us an opportunity to do this and not do it in such a punk rock way.
Yeah.
There will be aspects that are punk rock about this.
Yeah.
And what I mean by punk rock is, you just do it, right?
Yeah,
like, okay,
making it work.
Yeah, we have a couple problems, but we just do it because the music is the focus.
Mm-hmm.
Perfection is the enemy in things like this, I think. And so, one of the ways that this is maybe a little bit more punk is that it's short sets. The point, and it's another reason why we're calling it a showcase.
Yeah.
Because the point is for we get a snapshot. If you're performing at this event, no one is the headliner.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
No one is the top of the bill featured going to be more important than the person next to them. We're offering something that represents the artists on an even playing field. Every artist that is selected to perform, we are offering everyone the same amount of money.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The same amount of money, no matter how many people are in your band, no matter your experience. Great. You've toured Europe. It's the same amount of money. We're considering it a stipend.
Yeah.
Because a payment is more focused on
scaled.
and it's more focused on your experience. This is a little different. What we're offering is access to Music at the Intersection the next week to everyone who performs. Everyone who performs at Free For All is going to receive an artist pass.
Oh, wow.
To Music at the Intersection. And if you look up the price of passes online, you will know that that's
valuable.
That's a pretty big deal in and of itself. And it's really important because this is the overarching goal, is to include as many members of the music community that aren't already included in Music at the Intersection. So we have a stipend, we have that, and then there's something else that we haven't announced publicly yet because it's really for the musicians. And I assume your podcast, most of the people listening are going to be people in our music community.
Yeah, a lot of them.
So here's something. I don't think this is necessarily going to be the draw for everybody, but this is something that's really important to me, and it's really important to my co-founder Mike Landau, and it's important to Chris Hansen. And it is that the day before the festival starts on September 5th, we're going to have a private party for all of the performers and all of the staff that are working on the event. And this is meant to be a networking event. We will have badges at the door that you can put your name on.
Cool.
And everyone will be encouraged to just talk to each other. We might have a DJ performing, but by and large, this will be an event where people can, the performers can check in and get their credentials for the event
Right.
itself. And it is an event where, we've said already in a couple interviews that this is meant to create a situation for people to network, a platform to grow the music community. But to be honest, doing a music showcase with 10 stages doesn't necessarily do that on its own.
Right.
Like there will be some mingling. People will be crossing paths. I will be deliberately putting genres next to each other that aren't the same. But we want to really push the idea that this is meant to create new connections. This is meant to create new opportunities for people. And it's meant to foster future endeavors and creation. We're hoping to start the music community in a powerful direction by connecting people who have no reason to be in the same room together otherwise. So that is going to be a pretty big aspect, something that's really important to me.
Sure.
So all of the performers will be invited to that. And right now I'm looking at maybe we might be able to invite people who aren't performing, but there is the question of capacity of that room.
Sure.
And if it gets too big, it maybe becomes hard for people to actually communicate and network. So I think for this first year, at least, it won't be a public event. It will be for the people involved. But I mean, with 100 performing acts, many of those having multiple members, this is something that should, I call it like a summit.
Cool.
And that's what I'm hoping to facilitate here, as well as the festival, or the Maddie Festival, and promoting that event as well. Because, to be honest, Free for All wouldn't be getting off the ground without Music at the Intersection.
Right.
Yeah,
it's a huge part of the inspiration, but also kind of the infrastructure being in place that to transform and whatnot it's the part that I keep thinking about.
No one else is primed to really invest in the music community in that way.
Yeah.
And it's already part of their mission statement.
Sure.
You could say in a way that I called them out on it.
Yeah.
Like the
what if we actually do that?
The whole music community.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I think in many ways for a lot of people, they already feel like that particular festival does cover that. But as a music writer and a musician myself, and talking to other people, I have talked to people who feel like by not having punk, for instance, they're leaving out a part of St. Louis's cultural identity. And we have an incredible history of punk here in St. Louis specifically. So bridging the gap, if we're including all of these disparate genres, and I'm really also interested in including things that are super hard to classify.
Yeah.
So by creating this platform, what I'm hoping a lot of people go to our website right away when they hear this. Submissions close on July 10th, which really isn't that.
No, it's sneaking up. That's next week.
Yeah. And what I'm hoping is that people will give, I'm going to receive all the feedback in the nomination forms.
Yeah.
I'm looking at every single thing. So what I'm hoping to do is to shape the Free for All music showcase based on the people that apply and the nominations. And through doing that, I think that we will end up with something that is incredibly musically diverse and that celebrates the larger landscape of the St. Louis region, as opposed to specializing in one thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the thing. I mean, it was I buffered for a minute. Cut that.
We all got to do that.
Yeah. Sometimes I always feel like I always get kind of sad if I, for example, at the RFT showcase back in the day, if I would have seen somebody that I'd never ever heard of and they live right down the street, just because they do something a little different than what I normally do, I would get sad at first, like, oh, I can't believe I didn't know about this until now, especially if they actually have stuff out that I could go listen to. I was like, I could have been doing this already. And so the exciting part of that to me is, obviously the focus on local music, and then it's kind of in a unique space that you're not in all the time, or that's just kind of crammed together. And Is there video stuff in the works? Lo-Fi Cherokee was a huge inspiration to the content I make with these cameras on my Patreon, which I do like multicam of all my shows, and those are all on my Patreon thing, because I kind of wanted to learn how to do, some of that. Is there going to be a video element to the thing, or is that carts and horses?
Honestly, right now, the budget we're working with is so small.
Yeah.
Because this is really a pilot program for future events. However, people have reached out to me and offered these kinds of services for free. I'm really reluctant to ask anyone to do anything for free.
Yeah, because it makes it hard to rely on.
That's one part of it. The other thing though is like, okay, maybe I let a videographer do a really nice multi-video, multi-tracked recording of one of the bands that are performing.
Yeah.
And they put it on their YouTube. And what happens if it only gets 50 views? That's where I feel bad. Like, I want it to be worth that person's time. And so if I don't have the budget necessarily set aside to allocate to them, then I can't ensure that they're going to have a good experience working with me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, yeah, sure, do this.
Yeah.
And then it goes into the ether. And I say that as having been the person on the other side.
Right.
Like, I've done a lot of things for free for people over the years. And every once in a while, I've looked at it and been like, man, this took me like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
And just working on this, and barely anybody looked at it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
The intention is everything.
Yeah.
From those videographers and stuff. Like, is it because you want to help the community? Like, because this is like a community effort in that sense, of trying to like build up the community. Like, because you don't want to have that expectation.
And it's so easy to get all the way down on a project and realize, wait a minute, I'm doing all of this for free. And then, you've already done half of it. And then, the option is you either finish it for free or it sits for a long time. And then everyone's like, didn't we have cameras? Weren't there cameras?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But on the other side of it is this. If I am being genuine about this being an event that is a little bit more shaped by the community than by a board of directors,
Exactly,
who are in a room, who have experience, who are putting their best foot forward, there's a difference. I'm hoping to work as a facilitator just first and foremost. I'm here because I have experience doing an event that was similar, which we talked about at length, and maybe that's important, but I think the other part of it is that I'm also just a musician that wants more interesting opportunities inside the city. And what better way to do it than to do it yourself, to DIY.
Yeah.
However, when you want to do something that's actually big, that involves a whole community, you can't do it yourself. I can't walk in and tell you and you and you and everyone else what it's going to be like, how it's going to go down, what I think is good. Like, the only reliable way to do something that is going to actually serve our community and be something sustainable long term is to constantly be fielding questions from people within the community and taking those comments and taking those ideas, for what they are, and taking them seriously, and trying to do my best to include as much as I can without undermining any of the organizations we're working with, or undermining people in the community who are just like me, who are just want to see something cool happen and putting their best foot forward. So I'll more than likely still try to facilitate if anyone reaches out to me who wants to create media. And I will just be super straightforward with them about it. And say, like, this might not do anything for you.
Right.
It might not even do much for us.
Yeah.
But if you are interested, I will facilitate it, and I will connect you, And that goes for anyone with a podcast, anyone with a blog. I will make the time to talk to you.
Yeah.
Especially in this next month. Like, I am dedicated to prioritizing people who are making things happen in their own spaces, regardless of if it's making them money or if they have sponsorships.
Is there a central URL to find the thing, or
There is. It's freeforallstl.com, the number 4.
Yeah.
And right now,
that'll be the title of the show too, and that URL will be in the description. But
thank you.
Yeah.
Right now the URL redirects to the Google form.
Right.
But in mid-July, we're going to be launching a full free-for-all STL website. And that's one of the reasons why my partner in this, Mike Landau, isn't here right now. He's working every day on our new website. And what we're hoping to do is create a directory of resources on the website. So it's not going to just be about our showcase. It's going to, hopefully, the goal is to have a directory of all the record stores, places that people can get lessons, places where people can buy instruments, all the instrument shops. And we're hoping to include a list of any blogs, music blogs that people are doing, and podcasts. And this might not materialize immediately.
Right.
It might take us until we're very close to the festival. But the idea is that we're going to create a website that exists after the festival.
Right.
Mike is really passionate about potentially creating a directory of individual musicians for hire because he runs a recording studio.
It's hard. I'm going through it all the time. Somebody's always asking me, hey, I need this for this and blah, blah, blah. And then you got to figure out, hey, do you have rehearsal for church that day or are you free? A lot of the guys I know now are church guys for some reason.
Yeah, so this is also kicking off an endeavor like if St. Louis Magazine, for instance, decides to not do as much music coverage as they are doing right now, which is a fresh thing for them, and if I have my way, it'll continue to grow.
Yeah.
But if, for instance, we've experienced this time period where KDHX and Riverfront Times are gone. They're gone. But what some people might not know is we had a dedicated music publication called 11 at one time for several years.
Yeah,
and it was
great.
Beautiful looking, and it was free. And so St. Louis used to have so many resources. So the idea is that we're going to create a website that is primed to become a resource for those times in St. Louis where the other opportunities aren't there for people. I hope. I have some crazy ideas about what we could do in the future that might not even be worth going into right now because they are still very fantasy based.
Yeah. But that's the thing I want people to know is that immediately you can go and you can nominate an artist or apply to perform yourself at freeforall with the number 4 STL.com. You can also nominate an artist if you'd really love to see somebody there. The nominations would mean a lot to them if you know somebody would be interested and they're applying and you want to affirm that whole thing. And then also in the middle of July, that website's going to turn over with stuff that you can link with to participate further and learn more about where this goes. I think this is going to be a hugely positive thing, and that was kind of why I was so excited. I was excited about it before I knew you were doing it because I wanted you to do something like that. You know what I mean?
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. Honestly, sometimes when I was in the trenches of working on the Riverfront Times event, I was at odds with things that my employer wanted from me and things that I wanted for the event. And there were a lot of very sleepless nights.
Yeah.
Times where I was really stressed out.
Well, and it's hard to remember in that situation, too, that there are people looking forward to it and that it's worth it for them. And that, because you don't know that until you either deliver or you disappoint them and then you see you know what I mean? And so when you're up all night trying to answer emails and trying to secure confirmations from people for different things and get an idea of the spaces and whatnot, it's easy to forget that, there's people maybe that aren't even in bands anymore, just like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had that and we went down and saw some stuff and see what was going on? And
absolutely,
yeah, that's the thing that makes me so excited about it.
Yeah, when March 2020 rolled around and that year's RFT showcase was canceled, I was actually relieved because the previous year was such a success in so many ways that I felt like I don't know if I can make this any better.
Right.
In the Grove. But one of the ways that I thought we could improve it was by making it free.
Yeah.
And that was my pitch that year, and that pitch was rejected. And I was calling it free for all back then.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is, as 2020 rolled on, 2021 came around, I was getting very comfortable not doing that work anymore.
Yeah.
And I stopped performing until last year, and not for any real negative reason. I play music for one of my part-time jobs. I work at Washington University in the Performing Arts Department, and I provide live music for a variety of modern dance classes during the semester.
Oh, fun.
And obviously with the federal cuts happening, I'm not sure how much longer that's going to last, but I've been there since 2016, and so I've had the privilege to work as a professional musician as well, on top of my work in local media and events. And so I'm looking at things from, multiple perspectives. And there was a time, just a couple years ago where I was like, I won't be doing events anymore. I'll get to live as a musician and do other work.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I got pulled back in 2022 to do a couple things. And that's where I met Mike Landau.
Right.
We started having conversations even back then, because he was like, "You're the guy that did the RFT Fest." And I reluctantly said, yeah, exactly.
Did I make you do anything you didn't want to do? That's what I would think. It's like, which PA did you end up with? I'm so sorry. It was my preemptive. I had a positive experience, but I was still drinking then. So I kind of wish I could remember it more, because that was the thing. Me and Caroline would put them away. So that's my thing, is I think it has so much potential. There's an obvious need for it. It's, it gonna accidentally or otherwise include tons of my friends. All of my friends are in bands or were in bands or make something, because that's just what I've been spending all my free time on for so long. So we're over the hour, so I don't want to hold you for too long, but I definitely want to reiterate just kind of where you're at with the whole thing and what you're excited about.
Yeah. Well, I want to just point out, ever since I stopped doing that RFT event, people never stopped asking me about doing something new.
Yeah.
And there were conversations I had with people who own venues in St. Louis, promoters, production companies, and when they came to me to just ask me about it and if something was happening, I tried to encourage as many people as possible to make something new.
Yeah. Do it. Somebody please do it.
And I even said it under the premise of make something new and please book one of my bands.
Yeah.
Like, I want to experience this kind of event in a positive environment where I don't get turned off.
Yeah.
Like I want to have fun now. And there were a couple things that I know were pitched to different organizations, and it never got off the ground. So last year, Mike Landau contacted me and was like, "Okay, Joe, how do you feel now?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Actually, enough time has passed, and I haven't seen anybody else pop up with a similar concept. I'm starting to feel like I'm the one that has to do it. It's going to happen."
It's the same thing happened to Jesus. You have to do it, Joe. God has one son, Joe.
It's true.
For example, I mean, just to draw that, we could also talk about The Matrix.
I was thinking Lion King.
The Lion King. Mufasa only had the one baby, and then he fell off that cliff, Joe.
Am I
You're Mufasa's only baby.
You're Simba.
Oh.
You're Simba.
I mean, you don't have to stay in charge. You could decentralize the monarchy once you ascend to the throne, but you got to get there.
I don't want to be on any throne.
That's why I like you, Joe.
Yeah.
Honestly, I keep my social media private because I don't want to be an influencer. Not that anybody's putting me in that position, but I never want.
You don't want to be like the centralized like tastemaker of this whole thing and be like the boss of, or be like the, you know what I mean? I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's not that you don't want to contribute and have responsibility, but it's that you're not looking for the attention or the gratitude for yourself. You'd rather them express that to the artists you're including.
Yeah, and I know the musicians are grateful. Like I understand that. That's part of the reason why I'm interested.
Because they've been hungry for it. They've been telling you for years.
Yeah. And what I would really like to do is establish something new that we all can look forward to. And I would like to get it to a point to where I'm not involved behind the scenes, and maybe I can go and just enjoy the show instead of running around from venue to venue like a crazy person, which is what I will end up doing inevitably.
Yeah.
And I would really love for it to become an institution in and of itself, something people look forward to every year, and that could, I could teach other people about my approach. I will say this. I went through a transformative program at the Regional Arts Commission in 2013 and 2014 called the Community Arts Training Institute. I was nominated to be part of this class. It's a class that you not only have to be nominated, but then you do an interview, and they
for placement.
Yeah, and back then they would pick 16 people a year. And these are people who are across many different creative fields, but also social work.
Yeah.
And Stephen Holdsworth was the person who nominated me and put me on a path of being much more community oriented than I was before. I was booking punk shows, I was booking noise shows.
But he saw that bigger potential for that kind of behavior in you.
Yes, and we spent a lot of time talking, and there were a couple years where I would count him as a mentor. Like there were performance art things that I was doing that were kind of political in nature, and I was really nervous about the ideas that I had because I didn't know how they would come off. So, I had a lot of long phone conversations with Stephen, who advised me, and he always sent me in the right direction. And one of the biggest contributions was nominating me for the Community Arts Training Institute. I actually didn't even get in the first year.
Yeah.
But the second year that I was nominated and applied, I made it in, and I learned. It expanded my world so much, and it connected me to some incredible people in our arts and music community. That I wouldn't have been in a room with otherwise.
Yeah.
And so that experience, I did that before I ever did an RFT showcase, but I don't think the RFT events would have been nearly as good. I don't even think I would have been the one to do those
without that. Yeah,
without that experience. So if there's anything I'd like to close on today, it is just to say that, for me, I'm only here because other people maybe projected something onto me that they thought that would be a good fit for me. And I like to think I'm fairly open-minded. So when those opportunities, interesting opportunities, were presented to me, I really just tried my best to rise to the occasion and be present for that stuff. And I know I made mistakes, and I apologize ahead of time for the mistakes I will make
in September.
For free for all.
Yeah. But it sounds like the spirit is good. People want it to happen, and people want to be a part of the process, even if it means little inconveniences about the money or the placement or the amount of time. I think the enthusiasm is absolutely going to be there.
Yeah, and if you don't, if you're not selected this year, the idea is that this will be here every year. So please continue to apply. No art grant that I've ever received or opportunity that I've had the privilege of being given. It's never the first time for me. I always had to go back.
Yeah.
I always had to be humbled and be told no first, and go through that experience.
Yeah, and it's like that with, if you're an author or if you're anything really, there's always going to be people like publishers will tell you all the time, especially over the last 30 years, that we can't put it out this year, but resubmit it because it has potential. We want it in the future. Bands are like that. There's so many bands that I was like, nobody knows about this. It's never going to be anything. And then, you have these memorable experiences that come out of because you were patient. You kind of stuck with it. You kind of insisted that it's going to be fun regardless. Yeah.
St. Louis is a city where we don't necessarily have that music industry that like a Nashville has. So we are a music city.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And anyone you talk to,
we just don't get paid as often as other cities do.
Correct. And that's the truth. And so St. Louis is a music city. And we're a music city in a little bit of a different way. And it's because people here will continue to make music and perform music and create community regardless of the money that's involved.
Yeah, I agree.
And the appeal of Free For All is to include those people who aren't ever going to be professionals. The people who don't even want to, like, I don't want to perform at the pageant personally.
Yeah.
You know, I prefer smaller stages for my own work.
I agree. I mean, I would, like I mentioned earlier, I would totally every show rather be What the Fuck Is Up Denny's than be a nice theater and, like, you know, or something, you know, more prestigious. I would much rather, you know, hook the synth up in a pizza place, even if I have to, because of to make it memorable and to connect with the audience. And it's parts of it are less intimidating because it's not like white tablecloth type of environment, but it's also exciting because you're focusing on just the music in a more authentic way. I totally agree.
Yeah, it's about working class musicians, and that doesn't mean musicians specifically who are working. It's about, you know, maybe you work 50 hours a week, you know, but you have a band with your friends and you do play out occasionally and you guys bring people and you look at this event and say, like, I want to play in this kind of atmosphere where there are people always coming and going, there's a big crowd, and people are here specifically because Free For All said, we want you to discover a new band that you would love through this event. And we hope that that's the audience that this attracts. People who aren't going for a specific band. People who are like, wow, that's a crazy experience. Let's go.
I love that. Free For All, the number 4, STL.com. It'll be in the show description. It'll probably be across the bottom here in a new font I'm trying. Stay tuned. It's going to be really great. You're going to see us there for sure, checking it out. So Free For All, STL.com. Joe, thank you so much for being so generous with your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh my God, I'm so excited about the whole thing. I gotta pee, and we're gonna go. We'll see you next week.